Welcome to the ideaXme show that show the profiles, the stories behind humans that are really serving as a major inspiration to others in all their respective fields of endeavor. I'm Ira Pastor. I'm normally your health and wellness ambassador, but today I'm going to be wearing some additional hats. Because most people that subscribe to the show know that we cover a range of human interest topics from the environment to space to literature and so forth, as well as stories about sports and human bravery and perseverance, both of which hats I'll be wearing today on the show. Most people may not know that aside from my career in the pharmaceutical industry, I've also been a major fan of professional boxing my entire life, growing up here as a young child in Philadelphia. And that's why I'm really so excited that today, joining on the show is Miss Jackie Kallen, the First Lady of Boxing, one of boxing's first and considered by many the most successful female manager in the history of the sport. Jackie grew up in Detroit, and her career started in show business journalism, where she was responsible for interviewing a wide range of celebrities, from Elvis Presley to Frank Sinatra to Rolling Stones, countless others. In 1977, she was assigned to interview a boxing prospect from the famous Kronk gym in Detroit, Michigan, by the name of Thomas Hitman Hearns, I guess at the time Motor City Cobra Hearns, who ultimately went on to become five-time world title holder. She became fascinated in sports and in boxing and started working as a sports journalist, specializing in boxing. Spent a decade as Tommy Hearns' publicist to a period of his most famous fights from Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler, and so forth, and made her own managerial debut in 1988 and managed her first world champion in 1991 when James Lights Out Tony knocked out then rising star Michael Nunn to win the IBF World Middleweight Championship, and went on to many other titles after that. She also managed Bronco McCart, who won the WAO Junior Middleweight Championship in 1996. She currently lives in Detroit, continues to manage professional fighters. Her life was the inspiration for the 2004 film Against the Ropes, starring Meg Ryan as herself, and then ultimately she had a speaking role in the movie. She's also worked as a consultant for Mark Burnett's reality TV series, The Contender. She's the author of two books, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, a fight plan for dealing with all of life's hard knocks, as well as Between the Ropes. And she does a tremendous amount of public speaking nowadays on topics as diverse as sexism, discrimination, life-threatening illness, as well as women's health initiatives. All that, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Well, that's a great introduction. I don't think you missed too much.
Try my best. So Audrey, can we basically start off by you taking us on a bit of the journey from your time growing up in Detroit to sort of that first day when you entered the Kronk gym and realized wow, this male-dominated sport is something that I have to be involved with and really get involved with.
Well, there's a long, long trail from beginning to there, because I come from a background of just having a brother and no sisters, and my father was one of three boys. And when I got married, my husband was one of four boys. And then when I had children, I had two boys. So I've always been involved in male-dominated sports, themes, cars, gambling, all the things that little boys did is kind of what I did growing up. So although I wasn't a real tomboy, I was interested in very male testosterone driven things. And so it wasn't a big stretch for me to end up in a male dominated world. But along the way, I found journalism, and that was my first love and still is. I still write. I still review concerts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never stop writing because that's a form of expression that I just feel like I need. So I try to keep up writing as much as I can. Then when I did meet Tommy Hearns and saw my first professional fight up close and right in front of me, I fell in love with the sport. I just thought it was the most compelling sport because it was mano a mano. It was one man against another, no team behind you, no backup. If you fumbled or dropped the ball, there was no one there to pick it up. It was, you were in there to survive and to overcome the odds and to win. And that's sort of a microcosm of life in general. We're all fighting the fight every day. So I was intrigued by that. And after interviewing Tommy, and then I interviewed Emmanuel Stewart, who was his trainer and manager, I asked if I could perhaps do some PR for them, do some press kits, work the weigh-ins, do some press conferences, and that led to a 10-year span where that's all I did. Besides writing my column, my only involvement in boxing at that time was doing PR and writing boxing stories for national boxing magazines. 10 years in, I got the bug to manage fighters. And that was a whole new business completely. But I thought I could do it, so I figured I'm going to give it a try.
It's fascinating because, you made this move from, it's a male-dominated sport into now a male-dominated business around the male-dominated sport. And then, in the course of just a couple of years, you take a prospect in James Toney and you take him to a championship. And the fascinating thing, I was at that point in time, when you had sort of these four kings, Duran and Hagler and Hearns and Leonard, that were sort of in the twilight. And you had this guy, Michael Nunn, who was sort of the heir apparent, the rising star. And, with one left hook, you basically, you changed the landscape. I mean, if there's like one point sort of an inflection in boxing history, that was that left hook. And then you really, I can't imagine, did that make people happier with you then? Or did you create a lot more enemies at that time? I mean, that must have been an amazing.
I think the haters are always going to be there, whatever you do, whether it's sports, the corporate world, or just housewives, who are jealous of each other and petty and catty. So I think there's haters in every walk of life. They never bother me because I just keep marching along doing my thing, and I wish them well, but they don't interfere with me or slow me down or stop me at all, because I don't care really what anyone else thinks. I never have. I'm sort of a tough-skinned girl, so none of that bothers me. But I think when that happened, I was still working with Tommy at the same time that I was working with my own stable of fighters. And I still work with Tommy Hearns to this day. So there was a big overlap because in '88, when I started managing, I was still with him. And then he had his second fight with Ray Leonard the next year in '89. So it all kind of fell together. And I didn't lose anything. I just kept adding things to the mix of my life. Sure. And the James Toney fight with Michael Nunn came about because someone else fell out of that fight. And it became available. And of course, everybody, all the pundits in boxing were saying, bad move, he's not ready, he's going to get killed. I took the fight in his backyard, in Michael Nunn's own backyard. Right. So the odds against us were 20-1. And it was a daunting move because if I was wrong and we lost the fight, then I knew I'd be written off as a flash in the pan, didn't know what I was doing, impulsive, impetuous female. So his winning validated me as not just a female manager, but a good manager. Absolutely. And that led to other fighters coming to me, and my stable grew from there. Because he won, because I took that chance and stayed cool and calm in the light of all the opposition that we had being in his backyard. He stayed at a beautiful hotel. We were put in a dump. He got all the privileges and we didn't. From that fight on, the tables turned.
I was looking at a Sports Illustrated article from, I think, the year, 1992, after the fight. And, one of the things, aside from highlighting you, that it talks about was that at the time you were a very strong proponent of your fighters being involved in charity works, aside from fighting. Still are. Can you tell us a little bit about how that all came about and sort of the concept there and the strategy of what you we're looking for to do with that? Because it's a fascinating.
Sure. I was brought up in a family that was very motivated to get out there and give back to the community. My mother was a civil rights worker, so from a young age, we were exposed to all different kinds of ethnic groups and socioeconomic groups. And so we didn't have any kind of social prejudices or biases growing up, my brother and I. We just kind of liked people or didn't based on how they were. And she encouraged us to get involved with the homeless. My mother was involved with the Native Americans. She did a lot of projects for different reservations that needed help. And she was just an activist. She believed in giving back.
Mhm.
So it's something that my brother and I did all of our lives and still do. We still go down and we feed the homeless, not by writing a check to a mission or by giving out, contributions to food banks. We go down hands on. We put together packages of food and also gloves and hats and socks and other things that people need. And we go down and we walk the streets and hand them out. And I've been doing that my whole life. And so I encourage the fighters I work with to get involved in something that they believed in, whether it was working with the homeless. I've worked a lot with battered women. I'm
Mhm.
on the board of a charity that is a free clinic for people that don't have health insurance. And I encourage all the guys I work with, women too, that we're going to do something to give back. We'll go to Children's Hospital, meet with some of the sick kids, let them try on the championship belts and get pictures taken with the fighters, things like that. We'll go downtown on Thanksgiving or Christmas and go to the rescue missions and help serve the meals so that they have an extra set of hands at a time when they really need volunteers. Whatever cause comes up that I feel my guys and I can get involved in, we do. Because anyone who's fortunate enough to have, the nice things in life, a car, a home, a job, it's our responsibility to help those that are less fortunate than us. It's a long answer to a short question,
No, it's
but
great.
I just feel it's my civic duty and it's my moral duty.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's wonderful. It's completely wonderful. And alongside that, you're also doing a lot of public speaking, a lot of inspirational
Not
speaking.
as much as I'd like to. I would like to be doing more. Some years I'm busier than other years. I kind of work it harder sometimes based on other things I'm doing. But there's nothing more enlightening to me than when I can get out and talk to a group, whether it's women or a youth group, and talk about empowering ourselves and how
Mhm.
we can be the best person that we can be physically, mentally, emotionally. And it's very important to me to teach young girls, number one, how to navigate the waters of dealing with men in social as well as professional situations.
Mhm.
And also to motivate people to learn to have a tough enough skin not to let other people slow you down or stop you. You have
Mhm.
to believe in yourself, go for a goal, and learn to just accept what you can't change and change what you can. And like they say in the Serenity Prayer, know the difference.
I had seen recent news clips of you and Tommy Hearns getting together again I don't know if it was amateur boxing or professional boxing in Detroit, but obviously a wonderful fighting city like Philly. Obviously times have changed a lot with regards to with the ultimate fighting and the MMA and now this bare knuckle boxing, and you're looking to sort of, I guess, reinvigorate it in Detroit. What are some of the things you're doing there? And obviously, I've always had a love for boxing. Do you think boxing will sort of prevail again with some of these other sort of combat sports, fading away, or where do you see the future of boxing going?
Well, it's
Uh,
an interesting question because boxing is the purest form of combat sports.
mm-hmm,
I've always been a purist. I like MMA. I've promoted MMA. I've worked with MMA fighters. And I think it's a sport that's got its own following. It's very interesting and I enjoy it. But it's not boxing. Boxing to me is the oldest and most fascinating combat sport there is. And it's starting to make a comeback, I think. I
mm-hmm,
think there were a few years, we always have that one marquee name, whether it was Joe Louis or whether it was Rocky Marciano, whether it was Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson or Sugar Ray Leonard or Floyd Mayweather. There's always been somebody that's kind of carried the sport. Well, we haven't had the heavyweight division in our country really
sure.
since Mike Tyson, to the point where after we had Lennox Lewis, he was an American, and then we had the Klitschko's. So it
Mm-hmm,
kind of got out of our hands for a while. And they always say, as the heavyweight division goes, there goes boxing.
sure.
So I think now we're starting to get more interest, with Sean Porter and Errol Spence and Triple G and Canelo Alvarez and, a lot of the fighters that are out there now. Terrence Crawford. We have some really good fighters. And I think the fans are coming back. It doesn't mean they're abandoning MMA, but I think a lot of the boxing fans are starting to come back again. So Tommy and I wanted to get involved in that in Detroit. We did a show last summer that was very successful, and it highlighted a lot of the local talent that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that boxing has just changed so much over the years. I think it's nice that we're starting to see more boxing on TV again, but a lot of it's going to live streaming now.
Okay.
That's the new way to watch boxing is you download these apps and you watch it live streaming. So because the business has changed and there's less amateur programs in most of the major cities. So I just worry, where are the future fighters going to come from that are going to go into the USA team for the Olympics if we don't have a strong amateur program?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'd like to get involved in more, is Golden Gloves and PAL boxing.
What about women's boxing as a strong business, a female in leadership roles in sports and business? What's your impression of women boxing? Is it a fad? Does it have a big future? Where's that all going?
I've been involved in it for a long time, over 20 years. I used to be a commissioner for female boxing, and I was the one that implemented the pregnancy rule, that we check for pregnancies before they fight, because you don't know sometimes the first trimester if you're pregnant. So I thought it would be a good idea to regulate that so that nobody would get hit in the stomach at a time when they were newly pregnant. I've been involved in that aspect of it. I've managed female fighters. I've promoted all female boxing with an organization, two of them actually. One of them was called Fatal Femmes, and the other one was A Ring of Their Own. And it just hasn't grown to the proportions that we had hoped it would. And there's always just that one name, whether it was Christy Martin, whether it was Layla Ali, and now Clarissa Shields. There's always that one name that women, know, other women know. If you ask a girl on the streets if they know any women fighters, there's usually one that they'll know. And, until there's more of them out there and there's more really compelling matches, like poor Clarissa, she has really nobody to fight anymore in her weight class. There just isn't enough of a supply of good female fighters. I mean, what's your take on it? You asked it, so I'm sure you have some thoughts on it.
I think it's a fascinating component of the sport. I guess I was on the same understanding that once, as you said, there needs to be this critical mass, let's say, of people to make exciting fights, and if there are not, then as great as that marquee name may be, if there's no one to fight. But
plus there's still that chauvinistic attitude. A lot of promoters don't want women on the card. They need separate dressing rooms. They need this. They just don't bother with it. And yet it's usually the best fight of the night, and the crowd loves to see the women fight. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why they don't welcome it and add it to their cards. But also, there just aren't a lot of good female fighters in most towns. And then there's, very few good opponents in that same weight class. So there's just a lack of competitors to make it a viable sport.
Absolutely. One of the themes, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we touch on this show is the topic of bravery, and whether that is bravery in the boxing ring or bravery in some business endeavor or in life in general. You have some very important messages that you've written about in terms of looking at life as a boxing match. Could you give us some of your top line on that, whether to anyone in the audience that's going to be watching from different perspectives about?
Well, my first book, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, is a self-help book, and it's written based around the boxing metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that apply to boxing apply to life, which is why I wrote it. But certainly you can get knocked down and get back up. How many times have we seen fights where the fighter who was knocked down gets back up and knocks out the other guy?
Sure.
And it's always that come from behind underdog win. And we can do that in life. You can lose a job, you can get divorced, things can go wrong, and the next day you can get the best job of your life and meet the man of your dreams. So you have to have hope and get back up and keep fighting, because that's number one. And of course, getting the right people in your corner. A fighter would be lost if he came back to his corner and no one was there, or the wrong people were there. It's in life too. You need supportive friends who are honest with you. You don't need a lot of yes people that tell you look great when you don't, and kind of blow smoke up your butt all the time of how great you are. You want someone that's going to tell you the truth and be honest with you. So getting the right people around you, I think, is important. And of course, like we talked before, developing a tough skin. It's not easy out there.
Nope.
And there's a lot of jealous people, people that you think are your friends and want the best for you and cheer you on. Once you get there, they're the first ones that are there to pull you down, whether it's jealousy or, that competitive nature. So you have to learn to just take a deep breath and keep on moving, and don't let anything get in your way.
Before I let you go, there's one other thing we typically do with all our guests on this show, and slightly different for you because you've met so many celebrities and athletes and business people throughout your career. I need to pose the question.
I've been very blessed about that, so let's hear it.
Absolutely. So this one is slightly different, but I'm going to allow you, Jackie Kallen, the First Lady of Boxing, to travel in my time machine over here to meet anyone else that you have not had the chance to meet. It could be an athlete, it could be a celebrity, it can be an artist, writer, whatever. For Jackie Kallen, who would that have been? You can meet anyone from history.
This is going to surprise you because it's not a celebrity, it's not a famous athlete, but someone I think I would really like to meet was Eleanor Roosevelt. I know it's kind of a crazy answer, but she was a wonderful woman.
Absolutely.
Very, very bright, very strong. I think she'd be great to talk to. So I think if I had that opportunity, she would be someone I could learn from. And I think one of the important things about the people we choose to spend time with is how are they going to contribute to our life? What are they going to bring to our table? And I just believe she would bring a lot to my table.
I'm sure she'd be an outstanding person to talk to and learn from. Jackie, it's been so eye-opening and really an honor meeting you and having you take the time to come on the show and give your message of bravery and perseverance and tell the story. Really, thank you for everything you've done, not just in inspiring people, but thank you also, I put on the boxing hat, but thank you for building the sport and building the industry around it and all the things that you've done for it. And it's been I've watched you for a few decades now. You actually look the same as you did 40 years ago. Any special diet or exercise routine you want to tell people about?
This is going to be my favorite part of our whole discussion, is hearing you say that, because I'm going to be 74 years old.
You look the same.
And so to hear that is such a great compliment. But I think part of, I wouldn't call it a secret, but I think part of the reason why some people stay youthful is you have to have that zest for life. You have to get up every day and be grateful to be here and look forward to what that day is going to bring. Who are you going to meet? What are you going to do? How's the day going to unfold? I wake up with that same enthusiasm every single day. And I think laughter helps too. The more you laugh, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the more you achieve. So wake up happy, go through your day laughing, and I bet you'll get a lot done. I know I do. Absolutely
wonderful message. Thank you so much, everybody watching. It's been Miss Jackie Kallen, the First Lady of Boxing. Stay tuned to amazing things that she's still doing in the boxing world and professional sports.
Absolutely.
Keep an eye on Detroit and everything happening there. But Jackie, thank you once again so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
It was a real pleasure.
Bye-bye.